Content is rated R. This video contains sensitive and graphic content that may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following video contains language that may be inappropriate for young viewers. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Welcome to Behind the Bars, where we bring the unseen and the unheard stories from the depths of the prison system to the forefront. I'm your host, Jason Boss, and together we'll explore the madness, the chaos, and the harsh realities hidden behind the steel doors of prisons worldwide. From the local jailhouse to death row across the world, we'll show you the isolation, the seclusion, and the decades spent enduring unimaginable conditions. These are the stories of survival, struggle, and humanity in places most of us will never see. We're here to shine a light on what society often forgets, the voices of the incarcerated. Each story is real, each voice is authentic, and every moment reveals the raw, unfiltered truth of life behind the bars. Join me for a journey like no other, a journey into the darkness, the truth, and the resilience of the human spirit. This is Behind the Bars, real life, real stories. Welcome to Behind the Bars. I'm your host, Jason Boss, bringing you raw and unfiltered stories from inside the prison system. Today we focus on Rueben Reed, a man who has been incarcerated for over 10 years. Ruben's story is one of a contradiction, a man who lived a double life. At one point he was both a preacher and a gangster, a man who balanced faith with violence and, by his own account, a member of the Crips willing to kill anyone at any time. Due to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice's extreme isolation techniques, I couldn't speak with Ruben directly. Instead, this episode is based on a letter I wrote to him where he shared his story and his words from behind the bars. This is Ruben's story.
I phoned home the other day and was told the woman who molested me as a child was found dead. I was devastated. I loved her. At first I was a victim and then a willing participant. It started when I was 4 and lasted until I was 29. It only ended because I was sent to prison. For over 30 years, this and other meaningless acts of sex were my definition of love. This is hard for me to talk about, not because what was done to me, not because of the shame I feel, even though it does play a part, but because when I first reported it, no one believed me, and so I kept it a secret and haven't told anyone for 35 years. My name is Rueben Bennie Reed Jr., aka Gladiator. I am incarcerated at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. My inmate number is 02021938. This is my life. This is my story. This is my testimony. This is my song. As an ex-gangster, I cuss when I'm expressing myself, as you will hear in graphic, detailed descriptions of my life's events. In other words, I ain't gonna sugarcoat shit. I will omit certain crimes and details so that I don't incriminate myself and others. Statute of limitations still matter in some cases, and as you will soon see, the great state of Texas doesn't play fair. Other than that, this will be raw and uncut. Yahuwah wanted to personally give us the knowledge of good and evil. Knowledge is obtained from our relationships with people, places, things, and ideas. Relationships are powered by love. Love mismanaged is interpreted as hate, which is why our relationship with Yahuwah is essential. Through Him and only through Him can we truly understand the power of love, the greatest power in the universe. This is why we're to love Yahuwah with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbors as yourself, and love how the Messiah loved. Love outside as it was intended is love abused. Love in the wrong hands causes utter chaos. No one knows this better than me. I indulged in sex, drugs, and violence in an effort to find my true self, arriving at the truth that in fact I am love. Love is me. And a lot of people in this world have been looking for love in all the wrong places. I was born by the river. Actually, I was born in between two rivers, the Neches and the Trinity, in the East Texas town of Palestine. My mother and father were of the Pentecostal religion, and that is how they met at a church event. My father was a pastor, my mom was a missionary, and the church was the greatest influence in my young life. My father was retired military, having served 21 years and fought in the Korean and Vietnamese wars. Dad was 21 years older than Mama, and at 52 he sired me, so I'm an old man's baby. They divorced when I was 5, and so I grew up in the Shady Oaks neighborhood in Westwood, the suburbs of Palestine, as if the country can have a suburb. But it was the country part of the country, so my black neighborhood was on that side of town, and so we went to an all-white school. It was at school I first heard and learned my real name, Ruben. After calling roll and after my failure to answer her, my teacher said, "Son, don't you know your name?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Junior Reed." She explained to me my real name was Ruben. I also learned another name that day, nigger. While on the playground, while surrounded by the white kids, they decided to play a game. One kid, whose father turned out to be the head of the KKK, who I both would befriend later on in life, yells out, "Let's get the nigger." So I'm like, "Yeah, let's get him," only to receive a barrage of fists and kicks. That evening after school, me and Mama had some serious talking to do. I asked her why I never knew my real name. She explained to me I was named after my father, so Junior is just what we've always called you. I didn't want to be Ruben, so in an effort to comprise things, we settled on the name JR, since she and I loved the character Junior Ewing from Dallas. Next, I asked her what a nigger was, and the look on her face is one I'd never forget. You see, Mama was from one of the poorest families out of the South End, the poorest black side of town. She worked her ass off to get us where we were so we could enjoy a middle-class style of living, along with support from my father, who even though was divorced still played his role as a good man, and so we could get a great education. She said, "Junior, where did you hear that at?" I explained to her the playground scene, and she told me never let anyone call you that. And so my lifelong struggle with racism began. In East Texas, there's two gods, the Father and football. When not at church, we in the bushes eating berries, honeysuckles, hunting with BB guns and 22s, or worshiping the almighty pigskin. My big bro was a high school standout and my hero who went on to play at Oklahoma State with Barry Sanders. And I grew up with Adrian Peterson, the great Minnesota Vikings running back. My mama had a drug problem. She drug us to church every time the doors were open. Legend has it my first words were Jesus, and I've been the devil ever since, says my big sister Tanesha. Rest in peace. As a close-knit community, which was really a damn cult, we spent nights at each other's houses, which is how the molestation began and how my sister became pregnant at 13 by an 18-year-old man. Sex was just something we always heard about and did. I didn't know there were laws that regulated this shit until the guy who got my sister pregnant tried to get custody of my niece and the authorities got involved. It was soon swept under the rug in the mighty name of Jesus, ain't that a bitch? And so for years I had this warped idea about sex being love, and that you could just fuck anybody and everybody, and that was just the way shit was. I'm sorry for cussing, but this brings Gladiator to the surface. I will try to keep him suppressed. Around this time I was kicking it with my older cousins and tried weed for the first time when I was 8 years old. At school I was kicking ass defending my fellow niggers from the onslaught of the white kids. I was able to unite the other blacks and I was their leader, a role I still play to this day. This role bit me in the ass when I was about 12 and in the 6th grade. I got suspended for 3 days for fighting. On my first day back, I fought again and was expelled indefinitely. This time I whooped the right white boy. I was sent to live with my father in Waco to avoid the noose or being drugged. Oh yeah, this was still going on in East Texas in the 90s. My father lived in the hood in North Waco, North 11th Street, down the street from the infamous PSV Parkside and the Villages projects. Overnight it was a culture shock. I was in the hood. My stepmama was from the hood of South Waco, and I went to school in East Waco with kids from its various hoods. You took Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn and dropped him in Iraq or Afghanistan. I knew all about guns, but we hunted squirrels, rabbit, and deer. These niggers were hunting each other. I knew about weed/marijuana. But in this country we smoked joints and these guys were stuffing cigars and smoking what we called blunts. I learned about a drug called crack, and a group of kids in the neighborhood who were called Crips. Now my father was still a pastor, and church was the center of my universe, so much so that I became a ordained minister at 13. I still played football, but my new passion was video games and chilling with the boys in the hood. So I lived a double life, and I would live like this in many ways the rest of my days. Even now I struggle with obeying the Torah and the G-code, a set of rules gangsters live by. It also showed up in my back-and-forth travels from Palestine to Waco, where I would turn my family and friends onto the ways things were in the city. High school, I'm back in East Texas, and for the most part I'm now just church and football, not gangbanging really, but I had already been put down with the Crips. A Crippen youth minister imagined that only in the good old US of A. I began to excel in church and school. I was good at football and had offers from different colleges. I remember being invited to Texas A&M one weekend. Kyle Field, home of the 12th man, 100,000 screaming fans. It was more people in this stadium than in my hometown. When they cheered, the earth shook, and the bleachers would sway and rock when they swayed and rocked. This was the next level. This was football heaven. Here you were treated like royalty, and I had offers to the University of Miami, Baylor, and Waco, where everyone just knew I was going to go because of that being my second home. But then my double life caught up with me. I was still smoking weed, and when the oil started drug testing high school students for PEDs, I tested positive for marijuana. Thanks a lot, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGuire, and Barry Bonds. So all offers to these major universities were off the table, and I was crushed. So instead of cleaning up my act and choosing the straight and narrow road, I chose to start thugging and entered into my life of crime. My drug use increased. I now added PCP to the equation. It is used by dunking a cigarette in a liquid we call wet and smoking it. I also began to lightweight hustle selling weed, breaking in buildings and chilling with my street niggas on different sides of town. I had a good family, so much so that at 12 I had my own checkbook and bank account. So in high school, I drove around in my mom's Expedition until I got my own wheels. My mom worked the graveyard shift at the hospital, so my house was the chill spot. Sex, drugs, and drinking would take place and life was good. All my best friends lived with me at some point in time. This led to my little sister losing her virginity, and due to the scars and trauma from the dealings of my older sisters, who now all had children at an early age, I performed my first drive-by shooting. I ended up having sex with girls from church, some of which were way too young, and now I'm the one who's the monster. Those who hunt monsters better damn sure pray they don't become one. So now I'm involved in orgies and having sex with both male and females, and would continue to do so up until my incarceration. I never understood homosexual or bisexual classification. The same woman I mentioned earlier had an older brother, a notorious homosexual in our church and our community. He would go on to molest me and my little brother. My little brother is now an openly gay male living with HIV. By the grace of Yahuwah, I graduated high school. I shouldn't have, but I had coaches for teachers. Everyone loved me and knew, regardless of the fact I fucked up my football scholarship, I was going to be something someday. I still owe them that and plan on making good of their investment in me. Upon graduation, my mom seen I was out of control and headed for destruction. She insisted I go back to Waco, which I did, to live with my father and attend community college. I would attend college off and on for the next 10 years. I'm back in Waco. So I'm back with my father, the pastor, and I'm also back with the Crips. In college, I team up with a group of guys from East Texas like myself, and I introduced them to my niggers around the city. College was a blast. I mean, man, I'm partying. I got money because of my dad's VA benefits. I'm fucking everything that moves. I got weed by the pound, and the only people more popular than us on campus are the basketball team. But when we hit the club on Thursday nights, which is college night, we team up with them, so on one side of the club it's us, and on the other side it's Baylor's football and basketball team. This is before RG3 and before the basketball national championship runs. We wouldn't get noticed today in the same club as them, but back then they gave away tickets to any kind of Baylor game, except the girls' basketball, they've always been the shit. So even though we're the kids from the JUCO, we are still invited to frat and sorority parties around Baylor. We incorporated kids from the technical college into our clique, and man, we were the shit. I'm thugging so hard that I'm not even receiving credits for attendance or grades, which is sad because upon entering college I was given the nurse's entry exam by accident and passed it. I taught myself how to read around the age of 4. My mom bought the books in VHS, and I took it from there, and I would read anything laying around, and so for years I read my mom's college books on nursing and other courses, and that's how I passed the exam. My father wanted me to go into the medical field, but I wanted to be an engineer. Even with my awkward sex life, I thought nursing was too soft and gay, but to please my pops, I did it anyway. I now know that my many acts of violence over the years were due to the fact that I wanted to prove that I was a manly man. But it was also due to the fact that I just really enjoyed punching, stabbing, and shooting people. I can't describe the feeling I used to get from watching a man take his last breath. I was playing God, but soon my day would come. My father tried to convince me to get to the army, seeing that I was fucking up at school and hearing about the many skirmishes I've been encountering around Central and East Texas. After an arrest in Crockett, Texas for possession of a stolen firearm, my father was like, "Junior, you do know you could be getting paid to do all the stuff you run around here doing for free. All these shootings and getting shot at, just go to the army where you could use the discipline." I didn't listen. But what I did do was take his advice in a roundabout way. I started a rap career and convinced all my niggers to drop out of college and sell drugs with me. Now we could get paid to go to the club, and in between that we would sell coke, crack, and weed. We all got jobs at Golden Corral too. Some worked day shift, others worked nights. Whoever wasn't at work was on the clock at the trap house I had bought with a loan from the bank. My rap career was okay, but it was work, and it wasn't all the partying and play I thought it would be. Things soon began to go south. No one wanted to really stop partying long enough to stack sufficient amounts of money to cover bills. And soon I found myself back at my father's house back in college. So now I'm working, going to school, and rapping. My music career is looking promising, so despite my father's wishes, I once again leave school. By now I'm a certified nursing assistant at a nursing home. I told y'all I always lived a double life. Soon I quit that job and I'm back in the streets making music and selling crack. My drug use now includes coke, ecstasy, and I'm drinking like a fish. One night at one of my shows I meet the girl who would soon be my wife and the mother of my kids. At this point in life I still don't know or understand love. I have my mother who is always sending me away. I have my father who is great and would do anything for me, but he's old school. Throughout his life he never said I love you. I've only heard him say it about my mom, not even his last wife, my stepmother. So all I know is sex and to do right by a girl. If I ate a girl's pussy, that was my way of saying I love you. And all my main chicks knew this and accepted that as such. I sometimes wonder who was the most damaged one, me or them. So I hook up with this beautiful Mexican girl at 16. She has her own house and car. I wait until she's 17 before I engage in sex with her. She was special and I wanted her, but I wanted shit to be right so much that I give up rapping and get 2 jobs. I move back in with Dad and soon I move in with her. Racism comes in all forms, since this was her family's house and they are Mexican nationals or wetbacks as you say. See, even I'm racist, but they didn't approve of my black ass being there, so she says, "Fine, Daddy, I'm going where you go." Y'all, this little señorita is really what opened my eyes, heart and mind to the fact there exists a power in the universe that is so great, so beautiful, so pure. She has a past, a hard history too, and if ever I write a book or if ever she agrees to give Jason her story, you will hear all she has dealt with, all the same things as me, and plus the things I put her through. She becomes pregnant. During this time I sign for probation for the pistol case, and I violate my probation a few days before she goes into labor, and I'm in jail when she gives birth to my first son. I get out and struggle at this time. I'm struggling with addiction bad. I'm still selling crack and weed. I'm breaking in houses, and worst of all, I'm abusive to my girl. I recall times I've put the pistol in her face with the neighbors watching. We played bumper cars with Cadillacs and Buicks, fought in front of company. I sent her to the hospital with her eyes swollen shut, and she would lie for me, and I would apologize, and she would stay. Leaving never crossed her mind, and I never could understand why. So I married her, and 2 months after being married, she catches me coming out of a room with this beautiful mixed breed chick. The girl eventually had a baby by my adopted bro, and she tested positive for AIDS a few years ago. I myself have been tested a few times, and I don't have it. I once had the health department show up at my house while my wife was at work, saying someone I have recently slept with had tested positive for HIV, listed me as a sexual partner, and said I needed to come in for testing. If you've never been through that, let me tell you, that's some scary shit. And what makes it even worse is, how the fuck am I supposed to explain this to my wife? I just wasn't having an affair in the traditional sense. No, I was a habitual cheater with many different sexual partners. The test turned out okay, and I don't cheat until I get the results. And then I'm back at it again. My wife worked hard, sometimes 2 jobs. I hustled and stayed home with my son. I was Mr. Mom, once again, a double life. At night I would hit the streets. We kept Cadillacs, her favorite car, and vans and trucks. My yard always looked like a car lot, so at night I would cruise around. I tried not to sell dope out of the house. Sometimes I would stay gone for days on drug binges and orgies. I often thought about just leaving and never coming back. 'Cause you see, she was unfaithful too, but it was mainly due to the fact that I just didn't love her the right way. Hell, I didn't love myself, so it was impossible to return the love she gave me. The one night I packed my things and did leave, she and my son called me to inform me my dad was dead, and a piece of me died with him. If there was any kind of force on God's green earth that could get me to sit still and listen, if there was a voice that I would half-ass listen to, it was my dad's. He was the reason I was a youth minister. He was the one who told me, "Junior, that girl loves you. Marry her." He was the voice of reason that made me go to the hospital when I got stabbed in the chest and could have died. He was also the person I asked, "Dad, have you ever killed a man?" And he looked at me with that 1,000-mile stare, and with a cold and icy voice said, "Son, don't ever ask me that again." And he is the reason why I've stared capital murder in the face a few times, and know what it feels like to have the needle in its death chamber waiting for me just over life's horizon. All in an effort to hear "I love you." When he left, my mind went to this dark, dark place where no drug was strong enough to get me high. No drink was strong enough to get me drunk. A few months later, I went through the windshield of my brand new Ford F-150 when a tree ran out in front of my truck. That's right, a tree ran out in front of my truck. It's my story, I'll tell it how I want, and I'm sticking to it. The police unhandcuffed me from the hospital bed and said it was the greatest lie ever told. I was messed up pretty good, and you would think that would help me change my life. It did. For the worse. Now add prescription pain meds to the equation with a kill or be killed attitude. I choked my wife within an inch of her life and had her running down the street for help. I shot my homie's house up because he wouldn't come out after he picked up $20. I dropped and went and spent it on meth. I beat my sister's boyfriend with a tree branch. I knocked her next boyfriend out, left him in the street to be run over. I tried cooking meth in the backyard of a house in the hood. Fire department let me go, told them I was burning leaves. No one would suspect a nigga of attempting to cook meth in the middle of the hood. My stepmother beat me out of $100,000, so I was trying to find a way of rubbing her out and getting away with it. And finally, my wife left me, so I shot up my own house and left back to Palestine. My wife followed. In Palestine, we move in with my mom. My wife is now pregnant with our second child. She gives birth to our second son. At one point, my mom puts me out because my cocaine use is out of control. For the first time in my life I'm homeless, and wifey forever faithful, who my mom gave the option of her and the kids could stay joined me. Somehow or another we end back up at my mom's and I enroll in college and take the proceeds from student loans and Pell Grants. Rent a house and go into the crystal meth business. The epidemic is just hitting the black community in the country and soon would take the hoods all throughout the southern United States by storm. Overnight, me and a few ex-crack dealers and a few ex-crack smokers would become overnight kingpins. I had dibbled and dabbled with meth in the past, but it was always some backwood hillbilly shit. Then the cartel got a hold of it and boom, that white girl cocaine had a sister, and her name was Crystal. One of my gifts from Yahuwah is business, and with drugs I could always predict the market. If this was Wall Street, I would be the wolf or Gordon Gekko. No one's seen this coming except me. When I was locked up for probation violation years ago, I was in a tank where they placed all these white boys and Mexicans involved in a major sting. This was my first time meeting kingpins that didn't sell coke. They taught me the meth game, which is why I was in the backyard trying to make this stuff in the middle of the hood in North Waco. So I seen ice was the next big thing, so when it hit, I was more than ready for it. My friends and family to this day make fun of me because I had white workers. Blacks didn't know the measurements, weights, or how to deal with meth users. But they did eventually catch on, and by that time I was using too. Meth is America's dream drug. You work hard when on it, and you can work all day for days with no lunch break and no rest. And the sex on meth is so amazing. There is nothing like a meth whore. They been doing stuff to make you blush. I be like, girl, you so nasty, I can't believe you did that or that you let me do that to you. Bitch, you need Jesus, you need to go to church, girl. On meth, I stopped drinking. I became an active member in my community mainly because I had freaking energy. I had two families. Mine and my girlfriend who I took care of and whose kids loved me like a father. I went and covered the top row of my teeth with gold and diamonds. I tell people this is my meth mouth, play on the mouths of meth users whose teeth are black and rotten from meth use. But with all the addictions, it got out of hand. Meth and guns. Wow, I can count 5 shootings off the top of my head. Some still unsolved, so I'll move on. I dedicated half my house to meth use. I had the boom boom room which prosecutors brought up at my trial. And this is where I messed up in the past. I didn't hustle out of the house, but now my house is the spot the laws are watching. I'm under investigation and didn't know it, but my wife isn't happy and messing around, and the next thing you know, her lover, who happens to be my brother-in-law, who used to stay with us, convinces a few of my workers to set me up to get robbed. I come out the house early one morning about 4 a.m., and lo and behold, 2 of my workers are creeping around outside with a gun. I surprise them and get the drop on them, get the gun away from them, shoot both of them and leave them in the middle of the street to die and be run over, which is a recurring move of mine. SWAT team comes for me the next morning, surrounds me since I'm known for being armed and dangerous. That was August 6, 2014. I ain't been home since I went to trial and lost. The men I shot survived and turned state evidence to get out of some charges they were facing. I'm currently serving 20 years aggravated sentences ran concurrently. That's right, I shot 2 men at my house with their own gun that I took from them, and I got sent to prison. My double life once again caught up with me and my past bit me in the ass. But guess what? It gets worse. The first half of my life is child's play compared to what takes place behind the door. The Texas Department of Criminal Justice, or TDCJ, is its own world. It's a gangsta party with the RSVP, but you're coming with Gladiator as his guest.